Alright everyone, listen up, because a massive storm is gearing up to hit the United States, and it's bringing a whole host of problems with it, including the return of severe weather. We're talking damaging winds, large hail, and even a few tornadoes over the next couple of days. On top of that, a serious flooding threat could start to take shape across the central and southern plains. And to top it all off, as we head toward the end of the month and right around Thanksgiving, it looks like a blast of cold air is coming for parts of the country, with the return of snowfall on the horizon. So, in today's forecast, we're going to break down everything you absolutely need to know about the weather heading your way over the next 7 days. And we'll kick things off with what's happening across the country today. Right now, we're tracking a low-pressure system centered over Nebraska and Iowa, and this thing is setting the stage for a sneaky risk of severe weather today. That risk is focused back over in the lower Midwest and the Ohio Valley, where some damaging winds and maybe even a tornado or two could become a real possibility later this afternoon. We'll dive deeper into that in just a moment. Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, a big storm system is currently pushing its way into California. A ton of moisture is surging up into the desert southwest as we speak. We even have a low-end threat for severe weather in Arizona today, where a brief tornado can't be ruled out. A pretty unusual situation for that area. This storm will then track down into the southern plains over the next 48 hours, and it unleash even more severe weather for areas like Texas and Oklahoma before eventually shifting towards the Mississippi River Valley by Friday. Now, let's get into the details of this severe weather potential for the next few days, starting with today, which is Tuesday, where we have a marginal threat of severe weather already in place. This includes parts of the Ohio Valley, covering Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Missouri. The biggest worries for today will be those damaging winds and large hail, but there is also a potential for an isolated tornado or two. And one of the main reasons I'm highlighting today is because I believe there's even a chance for an isolated strong tornado if all the atmospheric ingredients come together just right. We won't know for sure if that's going to happen until later this afternoon. We've got some storms rumbling through this morning, and once that activity clears out, the atmosphere is going to become very unstable. If it can destabilize quickly enough, I could easily see a tornado or two spinning up. It's not a guarantee, but it's a pretty favorable setup for a few hours nonetheless. And this is absolutely an area we need to keep a very close eye on. Then, as we move into Wednesday, the severe weather threat will shift back to the southern plains. The Storm Prediction Center has issued a marginal threat for parts of Oklahoma and Texas, where more damaging winds, hail, and perhaps a brief tornado will be in play. To be honest, I don't see Wednesday being a massive outbreak, but this is something we'll be watching closely for the Dallas-Fort Worth area and also out towards Abilene, Texas. Then, as we look to Thursday, surprisingly, the Storm Prediction Center has no severe weather risk outlined just yet. I fully expect this to change in future updates, but we'll probably see at least a marginal, if not a slight risk of severe weather added for parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas for Thursday. Damaging winds, some large hail, and a couple of tornadoes are likely going to be the main hazards. Now, what's really fascinating about today's severe weather setup is that it's actually incredibly favorable for tornadoes. What you're looking at here are the significant tornado parameter values for this afternoon. It's not a huge area, but there will be a narrow corridor right in our triple point zone. That's where a low pressure system, a cold front, and a warm front all meet up. And we're basically going to be glued to the radar, watching for storms that try to fire up in southern Illinois and western Kentucky between about 2 and 7 o'clock. If any of these storms can remain isolated and get organized, there will be a real potential for a tornado. And I would not rule out a strong tornado in this type of environment. It's not a high probability because we won't have a ton of instability thanks to all the morning storms rolling through. But if this atmosphere can recharge fast enough this afternoon, we definitely need to watch this zone closely on this area where we could see the potential for a tornado or two. It's a very short window though. We're only talking about maybe a 3 to 4 hour period for severe weather before things really calm down after sunset. So here's the timing for today. Showers and thunderstorms will continue to push through this morning. By the time we get into the early afternoon, we'll be watching for that unstable environment back over here near the Mississippi River Valley to create the threat of a few supercells developing. I'm really only expecting one, or perhaps two, of these distinct supercells to fire up around 3 to 4 o'clock. And then by 5 to 6, notice how these storms don't look perfectly organized, but this would be the area to watch for the potential for an isolated tornado, damaging winds, and also hail up to the size of golf balls. And then by 8 to 9 o'clock, these storms will be pushing into parts of Tennessee and Kentucky, where they'll mostly be a wind threat, with not much of a tornado risk by the time they get closer to Nashville and into parts of eastern Tennessee. Now, looking beyond today's severe weather, we've got a lot more to talk about because we have multiple other storms on the way, including one that's set to arrive on Wednesday and Thursday. So, the storm system moving across the Ohio Valley right now is basically heading out by early tomorrow morning. There won't be much left of it. But on Wednesday afternoon and evening, we'll have to watch for at least some isolated severe weather, mainly in central Texas and southern Oklahoma, with an isolated wind and hail threat, and maybe a lone tornado during the late afternoon and early evening. Thursday, however, is looking like it's going to be the main event when it comes to severe weather and the risk of flooding, because we'll have a ton of moisture coming in from the Pacific and also getting pulled up from the Gulf of Mexico, and all of that is going to converge in one centralized area, which is Texas and Oklahoma. So we're looking at plenty of rain and some severe weather on Thursday. This is going to be an all-day kind of event, with some damaging winds, spotty hail, and maybe a couple of tornadoes being a possibility during the day on Thursday. Then, by Thursday night and into Friday morning, this storm system will continue to generate the threat of at least some isolated severe weather across the Mississippi Valley. And on Friday, it will continue its track to the east. It'll gradually weaken as it moves into the Ohio Valley. But before it loses its punch, there could still be some very isolated severe weather in Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, or Arkansas. Then, the rain will continue across the mid-Atlantic Friday into early Saturday. And then by Saturday and Sunday, this storm system finally moves out, and this is where the forecast gets a lot more uncertain. The European model here is suggesting that, yes, we could see another big storm by the beginning of next week, and that would be focused primarily across the southern plains where more severe weather would be on the table. Now, on the other hand, the GFS model, which is one we use very frequently here on the channel and is usually very accurate, doesn't show this storm system happening at all. Or, if it does happen, it wouldn't be until Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So there's definitely some uncertainty right now about what's going to happen next week. But we'll have to watch this closely, because if this scenario were to play out, we could definitely see some more severe weather. And then by the very end of November, right around Thanksgiving, we could have some very cold air diving down from Canada with high pressure dominating much of the country. But after that happens, there could be a possibility that we get one or two different winter weather events. Alright, we need to talk about some winter weather, whether it's full-blown storms or just some classic snowfall, which looks to be on the table for the very end of November and into early December. Now, this isn't a slam dunk yet, and we can't pinpoint where the snow will fall since we're still over a week away. But this is a trend we are watching like a hawk, because a whole lot of our forecast models are signaling a blast of Arctic air moving into much of the United States right around that time. Now, one of the biggest stories over the next few weeks will be the temperature drop. Right now, most of the country is enjoying above-average warmth, with very few cool spots. That's not going to change much as we head through the end of this week and into the weekend. But don't get too comfortable, because I think things are about to change in a big way by the end of November. That's when many of the computer models are hinting that we're going to get hit with a serious cold blast, if not a full-on Arctic invasion. And the timing on this? It looks to be arriving right around Thanksgiving. This map right here shows the potential for some bone-chilling air to settle in around that time, especially across parts of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. I want to be crystal clear that this is not 100% certain, but the trends have consistently shown that colder than normal weather is very likely during this period, at least for the northern tier of the country. Then, as we roll into early December, we'll likely see several more waves of that cold. These will be driven by strong storm systems that will literally pull that frigid air down from Canada. So, a lot is brewing for the end of the month, but for the next week, things will stay pretty tame. That said, we have a couple of big storms on the horizon in the next 7 to 10 days, one of which is coming up fast. That first one is going to hit within the next 72 hours, and it's going to be a real soaker for the southern and central plains. We're talking a widespread 1 to 3 inches of rain from around Joplin, Missouri, all the way back through Kentucky. I'm also seeing some isolated spots across Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri that could pick up some serious totals, upwards of 5 to 6 inches of rainfall, so get ready for that. Then, as we look ahead to the second half of next week, that's when things could get even more interesting. We could see another round of heavy rain in the southern plains, but it all depends on that next storm system. If that pans out, we wouldn't just be talking about a flood threat, but we'd also have to watch for a risk of severe weather. It's all still to be determined, but you can bet we're keeping a close eye on it for you. And as always, thank you all so much for watching the forecast today. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you never miss an update.